Welcome back, YouTube. And for those who do not know me, hello, my name is Noah. And on this channel, we talk about death, true crimes, haunted people, places, and things, spiritual reparations, and how you can fuck around and find out. If you are not subscribed, why you're here, subscribe and turn your notification bell on. And if you're not following me over on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok, please follow me there as well. On today's episode, we will be listening to a video, and it comes from here on YouTube. I read the story on Reddit about a year ago and lost it, but somebody was gracious enough 8 years ago to upload this very, very viral and weird Reddit story. The channel that it originally premiered on is called Why Is It Trending YouTube. I will be linking it down below because this story has to be heard by somebody other than me. Okay, so this is the story of a Haitian immigrant that was admitted into a psychiatric hospital, but some strange things was happening to her psychiatrist and to the people that kind of fucked around and found out by bothering this woman. So like I said, I will be linking down below. The channel has a lot of creepy content, and it's just very, very chef's kiss. If you're into this type of content, which I think you are because you follow me, make sure you follow this creator. Now, just a heads up, there is no picture to this. It is the perfect audio for you to clean your house on a long shift at night, whatever. It's like a podcast type of thing. So just be patient with me because I wasn't going to interrupt this story, whether it be true or not. It's Halloween time. It's spooky season. And this is the perfect amount of what the fuck. So put your AirPods in, headphones, and enjoy this story. Just listen to it.
Voodoo is an ancient West African religion practiced by more than 30 million people in Benin, Togo, and Ghana. Voodoo varieties are also present in the United States and the Caribbean, countries like Haiti. The word voodoo comes from the languages of West Africa and means spirit. This is appropriate as voodoo is a religion of spirits. Practitioners of voodoo believe that the world of humans is shared by the world of spirits. When a person dies, his spirit is passed to the world of the unseen, but is still able to see the human world, the visible world. Spirits, it is believed in some cases, can even impact the world of the living. Those practitioners of voodoo often sacrifice animals like goats and sheep. This terrifying story is told from the perspective of an American psychiatrist who came across a woman who is a voodooist and is allegedly true. I'm a psychiatrist, in training at least. I am completing my residency to be 100% truthful, but I'm almost there. The stories I've heard within these walls could fill a book, but there's one particular case that has caused me to lose sleep. This story has plagued my mind for far too long. Typing this out is my feeble attempt to make sense of something my rational mind refuses to comprehend. As stated above, I meet some fascinating characters where I work. For example, one patient will rant endlessly about how a demon named Och won't stop using his prehensile penis to impregnate her ears with fire ants, but that's a story for another time. I did my rounds a few months ago with my attending doctor and came across a new patient on my caseload. She seemed lovely, too lovely in fact. Not much seemed to be wrong with her. She greeted me with warm and accepting eyes upon our first meeting. What I saw before me was a demure woman in her late 30s. Timize Tifiet was her name. She was a Haitian immigrant, relatively new to the good old US of A. I entered her room, expecting to be greeted by a raving, paranoid mess. But what I was instead introduced to was one of the nicest, most refreshingly kind people that you could ever hope to meet at a psychiatric hospital. We are a progressive facility and allow our patients to personalize their rooms as they fit. I surveyed her room, hoping that something would call out to me and indicate that I had a hopelessly schizophrenic person before me to match the chart and information I had been given. But alas, this was not the case. All I saw was a line of dolls on the shelf. I was informed that Timothy had stitched them up herself. I marveled at the intricacies of each doll. The attention to detail was sublime on these figures. I immediately began to admire this woman. However, I was reminded that I was here for a reason. We began to talk. I inquired as to how she was doing. She replied that she was right as rain. There was such a serenity to her demeanor that it was infectious. However, I knew why she was there and began to focus my questioning in that direction. "So," I asked, "can you tell me about your relationship with your neighbor?" "He a mean ole, evil man. That rotten skull on his face. He knew what he'd done." She paused. "But he's smiling now, Chile. He's smiling now," she said while pointing to the dolls on her shelf. At the time, I did not get what she was trying to indicate. I went home that night and slept peacefully for what may be the last time in my life. Lo and behold, Timothy showed up on my schedule the next day, something I was happy to note. The mystery of this woman plagued me. I couldn't wait to unfurl her mind and discover what caused her to do what she did. You see, 3 months prior to our first meeting, she confronted her neighbor with a knife. She claimed that he was breaking into her apartment and moving things around in an attempt to frighten her into leaving. The most bizarre accusation she levied against him was that he had tunneled a hole into her apartment at night and had raped her. This had all the markings of the paranoid delusions of a schizophrenic. In any case, she stabbed him in the chest. Luckily for him, he escaped the building, and the wound was not fatal. At the hearing, Mr. Calvin Caldwell testified to all of this via Skype from his hospital bed. He remarked about her strange and demonic religious practices. He shouted that she was a violent psycho and a delusional nutjob. No one spoke in Timothy's defense. Her state-appointed attorney, clearly incompetent. He didn't even allow Timothy to testify on her own behalf. The prosecution stated that this crazy foreigner was a menace, dangerous, and absolutely unapologetic for her crimes. In a reversal of the usual course of things, Caldwell's testimony and the prosecution's evidence was so effective as to proving her insanity that she was deemed not fit to stand trial at the time. As I sat in her room, anticipation coursed through me as I prepared to delve into this woman's mind. "So, Timothy, can you tell me more about the incident with your neighbor?" She seized up for a moment, then the smile reappeared on her face, lending her the warm countenance that I'd grown fond of. "Not much to say. He knew what he did. He was a mean ole man. Never smiled once in his miserable life. But he's smiling now." She stood up from her bed and slowly walked towards her shelf of dolls. She picked up one in particular and handed it to me. I looked at the puppet in my hands. It was much more plain than the other dolls. In the belly of the figure was a pin. Connected to the pin was a red yarn. The yarn was pulled upwards and created a smile below its 2 beady eyes. "You'll see soon enough. He's smiling. He's smiling." Any further inquiries into the altercation with the neighbor were rebuffed. I wandered the hospital for the remainder of the day with a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. Timothy was odd, no doubt, but she seemed way too nice to attempt to kill a man unprovoked. I re-evaluated her life in an attempt to wrap my mind around the case. However, her claims just read too much like a prosecution complex born from a psychotic break. Even the nicest people can lose touch with reality and act out with violence that is completely out of their character. Still, something about this just didn't sit right. If any of this were true, or even she just believed it to be true, why hadn't she gone to the police? There are 2 answers to this. Immigrants, especially those not necessarily here in the States legally, are reluctant to turning to the authorities for almost any matter. The second option was that she had just fabricated the entire thing in her mind, and a delusional paranoid would be highly unlikely to seek out the help of the police department. I was leaning heavily towards the latter explanation. However, that feeling of unease latched on and remained with me for the rest of that evening. Loud, scratching noises were filling the void of silence in my bedroom. I brushed it off initially, but the noise persisted. As a matter of fact, it only grew in volume and proximity. My heart began to race. What the fuck is making that sound? The fact that my room was pitch black was not helping matters. I slowly got out of bed and turned on the lamp on my nightstand. The second the light illuminated the darkness, a crashing sound filled the air. This noise was so loud that I literally jumped into the air. The anxiety already coursing through me reached the fever pitch when I realized the source of that sound. And it was coming from the closet. I unplugged the lamp, the only thing I could find to defend myself, and carried it in my hands. I slowly inched my way towards the closed closet door. I opened it. Blackness greeted me. With my free hand, I pulled at the string to turn on the closet light. Nothing in the world could prepare me for what lay within. I dropped the lamp as it shattered into 100 pieces. Standing in my closet was the doll with the red smile. No longer merely inches big, but life-size. Frozen in place, I stared at its face. Its beady, lifeless eyes stared right back. I looked at its stomach as the silver pin gleamed in the light of the closet. Behind the doll, I could see what looked like a crude tunnel excavated from the apartment next door. My mind reeled. As the doll began to walk towards me, its hands stretched out. The crimson smile grew larger. I kept backing up and eventually fell onto my bed. The doll continued to follow me. A hand grabbed my shoulder. I turned to see Timothy's smiling face crouched next to my bed. Now, you see what he done. No matter, he's smiling now. He's smiling. I then woke up to my alarm. Panic seized me within moments as I was able to gather my thoughts. It was just a dream, I thought. I tried to tell myself that it was a dream over and over again on the way to the hospital, but I knew better. There was something so visceral and lucid about the experience. It can't just have been a dream. Plus, there was an undeniable fact that my rational mind could not refute. It was the wound on my foot I received that morning from stepping on my broken lamp. When I arrived at work, I saw that I would once again be meeting with Timothy that morning. Instead of being excited about this encounter, dread filled me. I felt nauseous. I stilled myself and made my way to her room. I opened her door and was greeted with a smile more bright and beaming than usual. Before a word could escape from my nervous lips, she spoke. "How you sleep last night, Chile?" she said with a wink. As unprofessional and cowardly as this is, I ran. You'll see, smiling," Timothy called to me as I rushed down the hallway. I got into my car and began to drive. I called the hospital to inform them that I was violently ill and I would not be coming back that day. With my mind in tatters, I parked my car and mulled over a course of action. Eventually I collected myself. I knew what I had to do. I had memorized Timothy's address from her file. I was going to confront this smiling neighbor of hers and get to the bottom of this thing. I arrived at her building and buzzed the supper. I was greeted by a surly man in his late 50s.
"What do you want?"
he said from the doorway of his apartment. "Sir, if you could just give a moment of your time. I'm one of the psychiatrists of Timothy Tiffiet, and I had a few questions."
"That crazy voodoo bitch? I'm glad they locked her up. Not my problem anymore. Good riddance,"
he said abruptly. "I was just wondering if you had any insight into her dispute with her neighbor, Mr. I drew a blank on his name.
"Caldwell? And I wish they would lock that fucking piece of shit too. But I guess being an insufferable asshole isn't a crime."
The supper seemed to open up slightly, finding joy in trash-talking the tenant.
"He's such a miserable fuck sitting up there all by himself. So fucking rude to everyone he runs into with that fucking scar on his face. Well, that's what you get when you never marry and have kids. Though, I couldn't imagine anyone standing more than 2 seconds with the guy. I have no idea why he wants to expand his unit into 2 units. What use could he possibly have for all that space? Well, now that she's gone, the board is probably going to approve."
"Pardon?" I called out as my eyebrows raised.
"Yeah, that's what they were fighting about. He wanted her unit, and she wouldn't leave. He wouldn't leave the bitch alone about it."
I was flabbergasted. Don't you think it would have been pertinent to tell the police this? She's sitting in a psychiatric hospital right now because his harassment of her was thought to be a delusion."
"Well, no one asked me, and to be frank, that's where she belongs anyway. That voodoo shit she's up to is insane and fucking godless,"
he said dismissively. "Listen, in our sessions, she claims that Mr. Caldwell was tunneling into her apartment. Is there any truth to that? In light of what you just told me, that doesn't seem so far-fetched."
"Well, this is the first I'm hearing about that specifically. She never told me about anything of that sort. I couldn't stand that woman with her stupid voodoo nonsense and those freaky-ass dolls, and she knew it. We weren't particularly close if you catch my drift."
I was really starting to despise this man, but I pressed on. There were no witnesses. The case entirely rests on Caldwell's testimony. What if he really did rape her? What if the altercation wasn't so clear-cut? I could see a case being made for self-defense if he really harassed and assaulted her. The super stared back at me blankly. Well, don't you think it's worth looking into? I asked, with rage beginning to build in my voice from talking to this jerk. He caught a hint of it, and his face turned sour.
Again, not my fucking problem.
He slammed the door to his unit in my face. I contemplated leaving the apartment building and returning to the hospital to inform my superiors about what I had discovered. However, my feet wouldn't move to the exit. I recalled what I had seen when searching the buzzer for the superintendent. Caldwell 2C. Without fully comprehending what I was doing, or the lengths I was willing to go to find answers, I ascended the stairs. As I came upon the door, I took a deep breath and knocked. No answer. I continued to knock and pressed my ear against the door. Nothing was stirring inside. Figuring the type of man Mr. Caldwell was, trying to turn his doorknob would be fruitless, as he would have 6 deadbolts locked on the other side. However, I gave it a shot. To my surprise, the knob turned, providing me with entrance to the apartment. I slowly crept into this dark and dingy abode. I quickly surveyed my surroundings. This place was disgusting. Empty pizza boxes and filth lined the floor of the entryway. The living room looked no different. Trash and piles of dishes lined the ancient coffee table. As I moved towards the kitchen, the smell finally reached my nose. It was a pungent stench. Something was rotting. I assumed that it would in no way be surprising if a dead animal lay somewhere in the offal of this filthy place. Jesus, how could this guy be living like this? I thought. I made my way to what must have been the bedroom. The door was closed. I made a mental note that this room had to be adjacent to Timothy's apartment. I knocked on the door. Again, no answer. I gathered my courage and turned the knob. The door swung open. Immediately, the smell made me retch. It was an aroma that lay thick in the air and assaulted my nostrils. My first instinct was to run, but I was so close to finding the truth. I just had to know. I had to. I felt drawn forward. I placed my shirt over my mouth and nose as I looked around the room. On the wall shared with Timothy's apartment stood a dresser. It was askew, pointing at a 45-degree angle. I circled around and saw what I hoped to find. A small, dark hole lay in front of me. As the smell continued to overwhelm me, I got on my knees and pulled out my cell phone to use as a flashlight. How I wish I had just left well enough alone, that my curiosity hadn't gotten the better of me. As I shined the light into the hole in the wall, pure, unadulterated terror washed over me. What I saw there will haunt me for the rest of my life. Mr. Caldwell sat there in Timothy's closet. He was facing my direction, his beady, dead eyes boring a hole into me. A knife was plunged into his stomach. Through the gaping hole in his gut, Caldwell had yanked out his intestines. Grasping them with both hands, he had pulled his innards across his mouth, stretching them upwards into what would only resemble one thing, a red, beaming smile.
Hold on. Let me just get my thought process together. So let me get this straight. In this story, because we don't know if this is true, right? In this story, this man essays, can't say the real word, this woman invades her privacy, and she got put into a psychiatric hospital because they didn't do their due diligence. Coincidence? I think not. But either way, even if this is just a story that someone wrote on Reddit, okay? I know that magic like this exists. It is not just with voodoo. It's just the voodoos. They be voodooing, okay? So this is your friendly reminder to be a good neighbor. That is all for today, YouTube. And if you are interested in me covering a topic, person, place, or thing, please send me an email, as well as you'll be watching this on the day that Kaya and I are doing our collaboration. We will be going live from my page Calls from Beyond. I'll be tagging that down below because y'all not listening to me. Y'all not going over to Calls from Beyond the way y'all supposed to. But she will be my special guest and we're going to have such a good time. We will be live from the page at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. All right, so I'll see y'all there. And until next time, y'all do good, be good, stay safe.